It all started when I decided to take up a job as a food delivery rider. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me a sense of independence. Being on the road was thrilling in a strange way. The hum of my bike, the glow of streetlights, the rush of delivering piping hot meals to hungry customers. Little did I know that one late-night delivery would change my life forever. That night, the air was crisp, and the streets were quieter than usual. My app pinged with an order, a single pasta dish from a small Italian place downtown. The delivery address was in a part of town I rarely visited, an isolated residential area on the outskirts. The payout was unusually high, and I didn't think twice before accepting it. Money is money, right? The restaurant was bustling, and I had to wait longer than usual for the order. When I finally received the food, it was neatly packed, the aroma of garlic and cheese wafting through the bag. The clock read 11:47 p.m. as I set off toward the address. I remember thinking how strange it was for someone to order such a small meal so late at night. The roads leading to the destination grew narrower and darker as I drove. Streetlights became sparse, replaced by the dim glow of scattered porch lights. My GPS guided me to a cul-de-sac surrounded by tall, unkempt trees. The house in question was at the end, partially hidden by shadows. It looked old, with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. The porch light flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows on the overgrown lawn. I parked my bike, grabbed the food, and walked toward the front door. Something about the place unsettled me, but I brushed it off. "Deliver and leave," I muttered to myself. When I rang the doorbell, the sound echoed unnaturally, as if the house were hollow. No one answered. I rang again, then knocked. Still nothing. The app required a photo as proof of delivery, so I placed the bag on the porch and snapped a picture. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open behind me. "You're early," a man's voice said, deep and gravelly. I turned to see him standing in the doorway. He was tall, with unkempt hair and sunken eyes that gleamed unnervingly in the dim light. He wore a stained hoodie and jeans, and his hands were hidden in his pockets. Here's your food," I said, trying to sound casual. I gestured to the bag on the ground. He stared at me for a moment too long before stepping forward to pick it up. "Thanks," he mumbled, then added, "Wait." I froze. "Yeah? Can you help me with something? My phone's acting up, and I can't figure out how to update this app. You know how to do that, right?" Every instinct screamed at me to say no, but his tone was oddly pleading. I didn't want to be rude, so I reluctantly said, "Sure, let me see." He stepped back into the house, holding the door open. I hesitated. The dim interior was barely lit, the shadows seeming to shift with every flicker of the porch light. "It's just inside," he said, his voice impatient now. "I'm kind of in a hurry," I replied, stepping back. "It'll only take a minute," he insisted, his tone softening again. Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. "Sorry, I really have to go," I said firmly, turning back toward my bike. Before I could take another step, I heard the sound of something heavy scraping against the floor inside. I didn't dare look back. My heart pounded as I mounted my bike and sped off, glancing in my mirror to see the man still standing in the doorway, watching me leave. Back at home, I couldn't shake the encounter. His gaunt face and strange behavior replayed in my mind. I told myself it was just a weird customer and tried to forget about it. The next night, I got another delivery request. When I checked the address, my stomach dropped. It was the same house. I considered declining it but hesitated. Declining too many orders would lower my rating, and I needed the money. Maybe he'll be normal this time, I thought, trying to convince myself. When I arrived, the house looked even more foreboding. The flickering porch light was out, and the windows were dark. I rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. Just as I was about to leave, a text came through the app. "Come inside. Door's open." "Not a chance," I muttered. I texted back. "Can you come to the door?" No response. I took a deep breath, set the food on the porch, and snapped a photo. As I turned to leave, The door creaked open again. My heart raced as I glanced back. The man was there, his face partially hidden in the shadows. "Didn't you get my text?" he asked, his tone irritated. "Yeah, but I'm not allowed to enter customers' homes," I lied. "Just leave it here," he said abruptly, snatching the bag and slamming the door shut. That should have been the end of it, but the next day, I noticed something strange. A news alert popped up on my phone. A body had been discovered near the area of that house. The victim was a delivery rider, and the description matched a guy I had seen at the restaurant the night before. My blood ran cold. Was it just a coincidence? I decided to report the man's behavior to my delivery app's support team. They assured me they'd investigate, and told me not to worry. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I went out for deliveries, I felt a pair of eyes on me. One night, after finishing my shift, I returned to my apartment to find a note slipped under my door. It read, "Why didn't you come inside?" My hands trembled as I scanned the empty hallway. There was no sign of anyone. I called the police and reported everything: the strange deliveries, the man's behavior, the note. They took my statement but didn't seem particularly concerned. They promised to keep an eye on the area, but that did little to ease my fear. A week passed without incident, and I began to think it was over. Then, one night, I got another delivery request. My heart sank when I saw the address. This time, I refused it. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a message. "Why are you avoiding me?" I didn't respond. I blocked the number and turned off my phone. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by a noise outside my window. Peeking through the curtains, I saw him standing there, staring up at me. His face twisted into a grin when he saw me. I backed away, heart pounding, and called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. They searched the area but found no trace of him. The officer suggested I stay with a friend or family for a while. I took their advice and crashed at a friend's place. The next day, I learned that the man had been arrested. A neighbor had spotted him lurking around and called the police. During their investigation, they discovered evidence linking him to several disappearances, including the delivery rider from the news. When they searched his house, they found a hidden room in the basement filled with disturbing items: ropes, duct tape, and Polaroids of his victims. I felt a mix of relief and horror. Relief that he was caught, but horror at how close I'd come to being one of his victims. The experience left me shaken, but it also made me more cautious. I quit the delivery job and moved to a new city, vowing never to take safety for granted again. It started as a part-time gig, something to fill the gaps between college classes. Food delivery wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a sense of purpose and some extra cash. I enjoyed riding my bike through the city streets, weaving through traffic, and feeling the night air against my skin. But one evening, an order came through that changed everything. It was a slow night, and I was contemplating wrapping up early when my app pinged with a delivery request. The pickup was at a small diner on the outskirts of town, and the drop-off was even farther, a residential address in a quiet, wooded area. The payout was generous, and I couldn't resist. The extra money would cover my weekend plans. The diner was a small, retro-styled place with neon lights flickering in the dark. The staff handed me a brown paper bag, the aroma of fried chicken wafting from it. I double-checked the address and set off, following the GPS as it guided me away from the city's bright lights. The journey grew more eerie as I ventured deeper into the suburbs. The houses became fewer and farther apart, their windows dark and unwelcoming. Eventually, the GPS led me to a narrow gravel road surrounded by dense trees. The address was at the end of it. The headlights of my bike barely pierced the darkness, and I began to feel uneasy. The house appeared suddenly, a small, single-story structure with a sagging roof and peeling paint. The porch light was dim, casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn. A rusty car sat in the driveway, its windows fogged up. I parked my bike, grabbed the food, and approached the door. I knocked and waited. No response. The app required a photo as proof of delivery, so I placed the bag on the porch and took out my phone. Just as I snapped the picture, the door creaked open. A man's face appeared in the gap, his features obscured by the shadows inside. "You're early," he said, his voice low and gravelly. Here's your order," I replied, holding up the bag. He stepped forward, his face coming into the light. He was older, maybe in his late 50s, with unkempt hair and tired eyes. He wore a plaid shirt with stains on it, and jeans that looked worn and dirty. He took the bag and gave me a small, almost forced smile. "Thanks," he said, then hesitated. "Hey, could you do me a favor?" "What kind of favor?" I asked, shifting uncomfortably. "My car won't start, and I need to move it. Can you give me a hand?" Every instinct screamed at me to say no. The situation felt off, but I didn't want to be rude. "Sorry, I'm not great with cars," I said, taking a step back. "Maybe call a mechanic?" His expression darkened for a moment before he nodded. "Yeah, sure. Thanks anyway." He retreated into the house and closed the door. Relieved, I hurried back to my bike and drove away, the strange encounter replaying in my mind. I told myself he was just a lonely old man, but the unease lingered. A few days later, I got another delivery request for the same address. My stomach churned, but curiosity got the better of me. I accepted the order and made my way back to the diner for the pickup. The staff seemed oblivious to the peculiar destination as they handed me the bag. When I arrived at the house, it looked the same, dilapidated and eerie. This time, the porch light was out, and the windows were dark. I knocked, but no one answered. As I placed the bag on the porch, I noticed something odd. The rusty car was gone, replaced by a different vehicle, a black van with tinted windows. The door creaked open again, and the same man appeared. He looked more disheveled than before, his eyes bloodshot and darting around nervously. "Thanks," he mumbled, grabbing the bag. "Have a good night," I said quickly, turning to leave. "Wait," he called out, stopping me in my tracks. "Yeah?" I replied, trying to hide my anxiety. "Do you know anyone looking for work? I could use some help around here," he said, his tone almost desperate. "Sorry, I don't," I lied, walking back to my bike. "Good luck, though." As I rode away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The man's behavior, the change in vehicles, and the overall atmosphere of the place gnawed at me. I decided to do some research. That night, I searched for the address online. There wasn't much information, but I found an old news article about a missing person last seen in that area. My heart raced as I read the details. The victim had been a delivery driver, just like me. I reported my concerns to the delivery app's support team, but they brushed it off, citing privacy concerns. Frustrated, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I reached out to a friend who was into true crime and shared my story. Together, we dug deeper. We found more reports of missing persons connected to the area. Most were delivery drivers or people with transient jobs. It was too much to be a coincidence. We compiled the information and went to the police. The officers were skeptical at first but agreed to investigate. Days turned into weeks, and I heard nothing. Then, one evening, I got a call from a detective. They had searched the property and found evidence linking the man to multiple disappearances. The black van was registered to a different name, and inside, they discovered restraints and other incriminating items. The man was arrested, and his house became a crime scene. As the investigation unfolded, horrifying details emerged. He had been luring delivery drivers and other unsuspecting visitors into his home, where they met their fate. The community was shaken, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and survivor's guilt. I quit my delivery job and moved away, leaving the city and its dark memories behind. The experience left a scar, but it also taught me to trust my instincts and prioritize my safety. I'll never forget the night I almost became another statistic, and I'll always be grateful that I got away. The gig started as a way to escape the monotony of my office job. Food delivery offered freedom, flexibility, and the occasional adrenaline rush of navigating city streets. I loved the mix of humanity I encountered, friendly strangers, eccentric regulars, and the solitude of late-night rides. But one delivery took me far from the comfort of the city's glow, and into a nightmare I never expected. It was a Friday night, and the city was alive with the buzz of weekend plans. My app pinged with a delivery request from a high-end sushi restaurant. The payout was hefty, and the destination was a sprawling suburban area. The address read, 16 Lavender Hollow, a name that sounded picturesque. I accepted, picked up the order, and set off. As I drove, the bright lights of the city faded into dimly lit roads lined with manicured lawns and expensive cars. But the farther I went, the houses grew sparser, the roads darker. Lavender Hollow turned out to be a cul-de-sac bordered by dense woods. The house was at the end, shrouded in shadows. It was massive, almost mansion-like, with tall iron gates that creaked open as I approached. I pulled up to the driveway and parked. The house loomed above, its windows dark except for a faint glow from a room upstairs. I grabbed the food and walked toward the front door. A chill ran down my spine. Something about the place felt wrong. I shook it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. I rang the doorbell, and the sound echoed ominously. A minute passed. Then another. Finally, the door opened just a crack. A man peered out. He was in his 40s, dressed in a robe, with a cigarette dangling from his lips. His face was sharp, almost gaunt, and his eyes darted around like he was expecting someone. "Delivery for Mr. Carter?" I said, holding up the bag. "Yeah," he muttered. He opened the door wider, revealing a lavish but oddly sterile interior. He took the bag, his fingers brushing mine for a moment. "Come in for a sec. I've got cash for a tip." "That's okay. You can add it on the app," I replied, stepping back. "The app's acting up," he insisted, his tone casual but firm. "Just a minute." I hesitated, every fiber of my being screaming not to step inside. But the thought of a decent tip and the man's calm demeanor nudged me forward. I crossed the threshold, and he closed the door behind me with a soft click. The air inside was heavy, the smell of cigarettes mingling with something metallic. "Wait here," he said, disappearing down a hallway. I stood awkwardly in the foyer, my eyes darting around. The house was immaculate but impersonal, like a show home. No family photos, no personal touches. Just pristine furniture and blank walls. Minutes ticked by. My unease grew. I was about to call out when I heard a faint noise, a muffled cry. My heart raced. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky. No response. The house was eerily silent. Then I heard it again, louder this time. It was coming from upstairs. I should have left, but something compelled me to investigate. Maybe it was the thought that someone needed help. I crept up the grand staircase, each step creaking under my weight. The sound led me to a closed door at the end of the hall. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Just as I was about to turn it, a voice behind me froze me in place. "What are you doing?" I spun around to see the man standing there, his expression unreadable. "I heard something," I stammered. "Is someone in there?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just my niece. She's not feeling well. You should go now." I nodded, backing away. "Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's fine," he interrupted, his tone sharper. "Leave." I bolted down the stairs and out the door, my heart pounding. As I reached my car, I glanced back and saw him watching me from the window. The light from the room upstairs flickered and went out. I drove off, my mind racing. Something was wrong. I couldn't just ignore it. I pulled over a few blocks away and called the police. I reported what I'd heard and seen, feeling both guilty and relieved as they assured me they'd check it out. The next day, I couldn't shake the incident. I kept refreshing local news sites, but there was no mention of Lavender Hollow. It wasn't until 2 days later that a headline caught my eye. Man arrested in connection to missing persons case. The article detailed how police had raided the house after my tip. They found evidence of multiple kidnappings, restraints, forged documents, and a hidden basement where victims had been held. The man's niece was one of them, a woman reported missing months ago. She was alive but traumatized. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. If I hadn't trusted my gut, who knows how many more people might have suffered. The man, his real name was still unknown, had been running a sophisticated operation, luring people into his trap under various guises. I quit food delivery after that. The thought of knocking on another stranger's door filled me with dread. But I couldn't stay silent about what had happened. I shared my story online, hoping to raise awareness and encourage others to trust their instincts. The experience left me scarred, but it also reminded me of the importance of vigilance. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes, it's just a man in a robe with a calm voice and a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Hey everyone, thank you so much for supporting this channel. It truly means a lot. As a broke college student editing all my videos on an Android phone, it takes a lot of effort to bring these stories to life. A laptop would help me create better content faster, so if you enjoy my work, please subscribe and share. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you so much.